I just have this quote up here because higher order functions are a pretty integral part of a programming paradigm called functional programming. That is a pretty old paradigm, but it's been gaining a lot of traction recently as a way to write really elegant and powerful and flexible and easy to read software. We're not going to go too deep into functional programming right now because we need to learn higher order functions first. But this is the first page of chapter 5 of Eloquent JavaScript. I slacked it out to you guys. It's available for free. Highly encourage you to read the first 6 chapters if you want to learn more about JavaScript and functional programming in particular. Cool. So now we can get started with the lecture proper. Or can we? Yes, we can. Great. So this is part 1 of higher order functions. Part 2 is going to be in the afternoon. And an overview of what we're going to talk about today is why functions are special in JavaScript, how we can pass functions into other functions. A term for that is callbacks. And then the array method for each, which is a great implementation of how higher order functions can help us program. So why are functions special? In JavaScript, functions are special because they aren't special. When we see functions in our programs, they look very different to any of the other data objects that we use. But the truth is that functions act a lot like strings, numbers, and arrays, in as much as they can be passed into functions just like any of those primitives. So a term that comes up a lot in JavaScript is first-class objects. Functions are first-class objects. So just like an object literal or an array or a primitive, we can assign functions as the value of a variable. We can pass them around. We can pass them into functions. We can return functions from functions. This is what higher order functions are all about, and in a larger way, functional programming is all about. So, for example, we know we can push strings or any value into an array. If we have this, this program will just push the string happy into amazing array. And when we console log amazing array, we will see, wait, can you guys see that? No, you can't. Hold on, let me fix this. That's not what I want to happen. Oh. Sorry for the delay. Okay, I don't know why that thing was happening before. But yeah, you can see that it's an array with the string happy 3 times. However, what we can also do is push functions into an array. Functions are objects, which means just like any other object, an array or an object literal, they can be pushed into a string. So now we've got an array where there are 3 elements inside the array, and every element is a function, which means that we can call those functions inside the array. On line 4, we define a function called happy function that just prints the string, I am happy. Bless you. On line 8, we have an array that has this happy function inside it 3 times. If we loop through that array the same way we would loop through an array of any other object, and call or invoke the function at every element of that array, what we're going to see is the console log from line 5 happening 3 times. Real quick, just confirmation about language and the lexicon of JavaScript. What is responsible for invoking a function here? Like what characters invoke a function? The parentheses, exactly. This is going to become, there are going to be a lot of parentheses coming up, so want to make sure we're all clear on that. Yeah, now we get to the good stuff, passing values into functions. So like I said before, we know that we can pass strings or any other value into a function. We've done it before. That means consequentially, oops, kind of spoiling it a little bit, but that means consequentially, just as we can pass a string mark into a function that takes a parameter and prints is happy, we can pass functions into functions. So on line 7, we have a function called first function that takes a parameter called another function. What first function does is console log that parameter that we give it. So if we have another function called happy function that prints a string, I am happy, and pass it into first function, and then invoke first function with that as the parameter, what do you think is going to be console logged here? Oh my god. All right, sorry. Ignore the fire alarm. What, does anyone have an idea of what's going to be console logged?
I am happy twice.
I am happy twice? Who thinks that's what's going to happen? Once? Let's see what happens. This is what happens. Because unlike in our for loop, this function isn't actually being invoked yet, right? We are just passing this function object, because functions are objects, into the first function, and it's being console logged. Let's do some live coding just to reiterate this, and pray that the fire alarm stops soon. So here you see I've got a function called I love my cat, and it returns, oh, yep. Yeah, sorry. Is this good? Great. We have a function called I love my cat, and it returns the string I love my cat. We have another function called sayer, which takes a function and returns that function. Now, just FYI, the reason that these parentheses are so far apart is that there are a lot of parentheses flying around, and I don't want you guys to get confused. Normally, code is not written this way. Disclaimer. What do you think this will console log? Anyone? Yeah? It is function I love my cat. Same situation as we saw on the slide. Sayer is a function that takes a function and then returns the function that we give it. What do you think happens if we do this? A little trickier. Leah. I love my cat. Who agrees with Leah? Anyone disagree with Leah? Anyone think it's going to be something else? It is I love my cat. Do you know why it's I love my cat? A little louder, please. Exactly. What's happening here is that sayer is returning whatever we give it, but what we're giving it is the invocation of the function I love my cat. So the invocation of I love my cat is a string, which means that when we pass this string into sayer, we return a string. What about this one? Jillian?
Is that going to return the entire first function?
You think it's going to return like something that says function I love my cat? Yeah? Yeah. Does anyone have a different opinion? Do we agree? Any thoughts? Yeah. An error because it has two parentheses? Andrew.
It says the first line, like function I love my cat, but not the whole thing.
Not the whole thing? Let's see what happens. Let's talk about why this happens. So what we're doing here, var for show sayer. And we're giving it I love my cat, right? For show is the returned value, like what this is doing, this var for show equals sayer I love my cat, is it is the returned value of this function, which means that this is that function. But what we're doing on line 15 is these two parentheses are invoking the returned value of Sayer that has been passed I love my cat, right? So this is equivalent to us doing this. It's tricky. Yeah.
So basically, like, because there is that pair of parentheses next to it, like, that's what makes it run. So the fact that there's like a set of parentheses around the variable is just kind of like an extra thing that doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference.
Repeat that, please.
Like the third and the second one they both run I love my cat, like, and run it because it doesn't make a difference that the variable is run by parentheses. It's just the set of parentheses next to it that's what makes it run.
Yeah, it's the set of parentheses the set of parentheses is invoking I love my cat, right? Well, actually that's not technically the case, or it's not the most accurate way to put it. On line 14, we are passing Sayer a string, right? Because we are passing Sayer the return value of I love my cat, which is a string. On line 15, we're passing Sayer a function, right? And so the return value of Sayer is the function I love my cat. But then immediately after we're doing that, we are invoking that return function. Does that answer your question? Sure. Yeah, I'll send you a link to this REPL so you can play around with it afterwards. But before I do that, and before we continue the lecture, I have one more question. Take a look at this one. Think about it. If you think you know what's happening, what it's going to return, or you even know what's happening, raise your hand and let me know. All right, Leah, you want to give it a shot? It's invoking I love my cat twice. So what do you think is going to be? So you think we're going to see I love my cat twice? Maybe. I can't argue with that. Maybe we will see I love my cat twice. Anything can happen with maybe. It's wonderful. Anyone else? It's an error. And it's not just any error, it's a type error, which means that we've tried to do something to a JavaScript value that doesn't want that thing done to it. In this case, what we're doing is trying to invoke a string because we are passing Sayer the return value of I love my cat, which is a string, and then we've got these parentheses here, which is trying to invoke a string. But obviously we can't do that. There's nothing to invoke. So that's why we're getting a type error here. We'll continue on just for the sake of going forward. Well, before we go on, does anyone want to see one more example of how this works? There will be other examples. That's why I was like, let's just go for it. So, but yes. Oops. Sorry, I don't know why this is taking so long to start up every time. Right, passing functions into functions. We've done that. Happy function. And yeah, this is what we just covered.
Sam?
Yeah.
I may have missed this from the previous semester. Just real quick. Why does it say function semicolon whenever you're invoking that? Like, it's not just returning values, it's returning also like
Yeah. The reason it's not returning the value. So let's go back for a second. The reason it is logging. Oops, sorry, didn't go back far enough. Okay, I've gone back too far now. Sorry, bear with me. You're asking why this is happening?
Yeah.
The reason this is happening is because first function console logs whatever we give it. And what we're giving it is a function. Right? First function isn't logging I am happy because we're not giving it I am happy. We're giving it a function that, when invoked, prints out I am happy.
Oh, okay. So when you invoke a function through a function, it's going to say the type of what you're invoking as well as give you what the function returns.
Not always. This thing that you're seeing here, I think, is unique to the function object. Like if you console log an object literal, if you console log an array, it's not going to say array : whatever. It's just going to be an array, or it's just going to be an object.
Yeah.
This is like a special thing telling you that happy function is a function. But if you wanted to get what is returned by happy function, you need to invoke it, which is what we were doing with I love my cat.
Right. Okay.
And it's what's happening here too. So you see where this function is being invoked?
Yeah, it's being invoked within the first function.
Exactly. On line 4.
Right.
Because of those parentheses.
Right. Okay.
So like here, let's go back to live coding for a second. Let's say we're gonna we'll do it like this. We'll say shouter is a function that takes so if you look at line 19, shouter is a function that returns the invocation of that function plus a bunch of exclamation points. So if we give shouter I love my cat, what do you think it's going to return? Yeah.
I think it's going to return I love my cat plus a lot of exclamation marks.
It's an extremely loud I love my cat.
Yeah.
But what if I did this?
It would return function with a lot of exclamation marks. Function I love my cat.
Yeah, but what it's essentially doing here is concatenate, because JavaScript has type coercion. It's trying to make sense of the fact that you're combining a function and a string. Does that clarify things a little bit?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
so it's just because you're calling the function, not invoking it. Just because of the way you typed it there without the parentheses, you're going to call the type of plus what the value of the return is.
One more time.
So when you take those parentheses out and just say return function, like that's going to give you the actual type of that value plus what the value is.
It's not giving you the type of it. It's just giving you the function, right? It's because so something to remember is that functions are objects. They're just a type of object. The same way that your curly braces key value pair is an object, a function is an object too. So what you're doing is you're trying to like JavaScript is coercing a string with an object. I think another way to illustrate this is let's do this. So this is something we've already covered a little bit, and by already covered I mean 5 minutes ago. Politer is a function that takes a function, invokes it, and then concatenates comma please. So if we give politer I love my cat, this is something we've seen before, but someone give me the answer anyway, just so I know that we're all awake on Saturday morning. I love my cat, please. Oh boy, wrong thing. There we go. I love my cat, please. If we do this, though, we're complicating things a lot. If I ask you what this logs, and tell you that, and tell you to look at line 16 as a hint? Who thinks that they can take a crack at what's happening here? It's a tough one. Anyone want to guess? Jillian? Yeah, exactly. Now, bonus question. Do you want to try modifying one of these functions to make it work correctly? If you put another parentheses after I love my cat? Like this? This is really tricky stuff. So what I'm going to do is just tell you how to make it work and then explain why it works. But we're going to go through it, bit by bit. So you're totally right that we're getting an error because we are passing the shouter function a string. And the shouter function, the first thing it does is try to invoke what we give it. And it can't invoke a string. So if we wanted to make this work, we would have to remove the invocation from shouter, because then shouter is being given something that it expects. So it's not a function anymore, it's a string. Oh my goodness, what has gone wrong? Let's find out.
I think you're missing a parentheses.
I am? Where? Oh, all right. Hey, thank you. 2 points. Yeah, now we get I love my cat, please, with those exclamation points that shouter has concatenated on at the end. Because we're not trying to invoke anything that can't be invoked. We're only invoking the things that can be invoked. That clears everything right up, right? We'll keep going. All right, yes. So the cool thing about passing functions into other functions is that we can add a lot of versatility in functions. For example, we've got two functions defined on this slide. We got three functions defined on this slide. But the first two are says hi and says bye. What those two things do are they take a parameter called name, and then they console log hi name or bye name, respectively. The function on line 9 also takes a name, but in addition to a name, it takes a function, say hi or bye. And we know it takes a function because its behavior is to invoke say hi or bye with the name that we give it. So if we do calls with name Sadie and says hi, what we're actually doing is telling the function calls with name to invoke the function says hi with the parameter Sadie. Oh, I forgot that it says bye too. Oh, but this is a great illustration of why functional programming and functional composition is so cool. With the one function calls with name, we can have it log two different things depending on the second parameter we give it. So now we get hi Sadie, or we get bye Sadie. Lucas, you look like you want to say something. Nope? Cool. We'll do the same thing here. We have a function called add world, which takes a primitive, a string, and then concatenates world onto that primitive. And we have a function calls with hello, which takes a function and then invokes that function with the parameter hello. So when we invoke calls with hello, which takes a function, with the function add world, which takes a string, we are giving the function add world the string hard-coded into calls with hello, and consequentially getting hello world. Let's go back to my cats for a second. So I've got 4 functions here. I've got feed kitten and pet kitten, which take a kitten name, a string, and return a string. And then I've got a function do something for Suki, which takes a function, and a function do something for Winky, which takes a function. But those 2 functions, what they do, like what those latter 2 functions do, is they give whatever function they have been passed the parameters Suki or Winky respectively. That means, hold on, I just want to get rid of any do I have any console logs here? No, I do. Oh, here they are. Just want it nice and clean. That means if I do feed kitten Suki, I'm going to get, here you go Suki, munch, munch, munch. But another way that I can do this is by calling the do something for Suki function with the function feed kitten. If I wanted to do a different thing for Suki, I would call this do something for Suki pet kitten. And Suki would get some pets.
So if you were to do something for Suki pet kitten with a set of parentheses, it would return an error because it would be like, why is there another set of parentheses than there has to be?
Yeah, so if I called do something for Suki and then feed kitten with the parentheses, is that what you were asking?
Yeah, I imagine the set inside, but I think both would return an error anyway.
Yeah, because what would happen here, like we'll go through what's actually happening on this line. We are giving do something for Suki a string, right? Well, actually, it's going to throw an error even before that. Is it going to throw an error? Hold on. I think it might actually concatenate. It might give us a line. This is what we were passing to do something for Suki. Yeah. So it's not going to give us an error. It's going to give us a string called undefined. So it's not going to throw an error because invoking a function without the parameter it's expecting, that parameter will default to undefined. So what we're going to get if we do something for Suki and then feed kitten. The fact remains we're giving feed like what we are giving this do something for Suki function, which expects a function, is a string. The string is here you go undefined munch munch munch. So like you intuited or calculated. I don't want intuited sounds like you don't know what you're doing. I don't want to. Like you calculated, we're going to get an error. Does anyone want to explore this a bit more? Does anyone have any other questions about how the latter 2 functions are using the first 2 functions to return strings? Yeah, no problem. Andrew.
So with that last one, where it just gave an error,
Yeah.
is that because it's just expecting the name of the function, whereas what you gave was a function calling a string?
So do something for Suki. What it does is it invokes what it is given with a parameter, and what it is trying to what it is trying to invoke is a string. So it's trying to call here you go undefined munch 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 with the string Suki. Yeah. If we had done like if we modified it, if we had done function plus that, It would give us a nonsensical sentence, but it wouldn't error out.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
All right, we're going to move forward just because we got a whole other part of this to cover. But during workshop, if you have any questions about this, obviously put in a help ticket. And like I said before, I'm going to Slack out a link to this REPL so you can play around with what you're given here. Goes with hello, did that, okay. Say all, great, yeah. This is gonna segue us into for each, which is the last thing we're gonna cover in this lecture. So what's happening on this slide is that we have a function called say to all that takes names and then a function called say with function names. It loops through the array of names that it's given, and for every name that it hits in the names parameter, it invokes the say with name function. So if we have a group, Jane, Jill, Pip, Mike, and a function, say hello with name, that just console logs hello name, and plug those into the say to all thing, who can think about what we're going to get? Jordan?
It's gonna be hello. I'm gonna have 4 strings hello,
Jill, Pip, Mike. Yeah, exactly. We can also use anonymous functions, which is to say a function that hasn't been defined before, but is being passed directly into a function that takes a function. So we have that same function, say to all, which it does. This function is exactly the same on line 3. And group is exactly the same. But now, instead of predefining our function, what was that function called on the last slide? It was called, it's like say hello, calls with hello. No, that was something else. It's a bit of latency, sorry. It's say hello with name. Basically, this logic inside say hello with name is being applied directly to the say to all function as an anonymous function. Is everyone somewhat familiar with the term anonymous function? Have you heard it before? No? So this is just an example of what an anonymous function is. It's a function that is not being declared. It's not, you are not pre-declaring it with the word function, and it is not, you're not assigning it to a variable. It's just like a little chunk of logic that you are passing indirectly. That sounds like the word indirectly, that you are directly passing in to a function, which means that that function only exists, the anonymous function only exists within the function's scope. But we're going to touch on scope and stuff a bit later. But yeah, like you can see, exact same output. And just to find, this is just a handy little thing that iterates what we already know, but we'll go through it. If you've got a function called plus that adds 2 numbers together, a function called minus that subtracts 2 numbers, and a function called calc that takes 2 numbers and one of the other 2 functions, we can make our own calculator kind of by console logging the calc function with its 2 numbers and whatever operation it's given. So now we get to for each. A function passed into another function, like what we've been doing, is often called a callback. So there are some built-in JavaScript features that use callbacks. Sorry. I just wanted everything to be there so you could see it and read it at your leisure. But there's a bit of latency here. It's really messing with the flow of my pedagogy. Anyway, like I was saying, we have a function passed into another function. It's often called a callback. And a couple built-in JavaScript methods use callbacks. When I say built-in JavaScript methods, I'm talking about stuff like .filter, I'm talking about stuff like dot to uppercase. These are functions that come predefined with the language JavaScript. For each is one of those built-in features. It's an array method and it accepts a callback as its only argument, which means it accepts a function as its only argument. When for each calls the callback, it is passing the current element in the array as the first argument of that callback. So to give you an example in code, we've got bridges that are just 3 bridges. Brooklyn, an array of bridges, Brooklyn, Golden Gate, London. And we have a function, log to uppercase, which just takes a parameter and prints it in uppercase. When we call the for each method on the array bridges and give it the function log to uppercase, what is happening is for each is looping over, it's iterating over that array the same way a for loop would. And then every time it hits a new element in that array, it passes that element into the function that we give for each. So let's do some live coding real quick to play around with this behavior. I've got 4 ghosts, Inky, Pinky, Blinky, and Clyde. Those are the ghosts in Pac-Man. I'm not crazy. We also have a function called do something to peeps. It takes some peeps, it takes a function, and it iterates over that peeps array and then calls whatever peep it's on with that function. Or it calls the function that we give it with whatever peep it's on. Sorry, reversed the ordering here. So if we have a function called say sup that takes a suppy and then prints suppy, and we do something to peeps. Someone tell me what's happening here on line 68. Andrew?
We'll do kind of something similar, like go through to them like sub Inky, sub Blinky, up Blinky.
Yeah, exactly. Let's, yeah. Oh, sorry. This is an example of an anonymous function. Should have brought this up earlier. But you can see here that this is the anonymous function. Well, this is the anonymous function. And it does the exact same thing as we did before. It's just not defined. Was that a hand raise or an eye itch? Okay, cool. Yeah, sorry. See you now, peripheral my vision. But what we want to play around with is for each. So now we've got a function eat that takes something and console logs something was eaten. Ghosts.forEach. Someone describe to me what this for each is doing. Or not just what this for each is doing, what this line 80 is doing. Was that a hand? Yep.
It's going through each element of the ghost and putting it into the function eat and using that element within ghost as the something, as the argument.
Yeah, that is exactly what it's doing. And just to illustrate, what do you think would happen if I did this? What do you think this would give us?
Same thing.
Same exact thing. I'm going to leave this up for like 15 seconds just so you guys can take a look. There's a lot of code flying around here. All right, we're going to go back to the slides. How many more do we have? Ah, just a couple. Great. All right. Did this, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, this is cool. So another cool feature of for each is that in addition to taking this first argument, which it always does, the parameter that the array, like the current array element is acting as, it also takes an index, which means if we use our same bridges array and we give it a function that not only logs the array element, but what its index is in the array, we get we have access to both. So just to show you that in action, I've got an array here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is actually another way to write for each statements. What I'm doing here, oh, sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. What do you think is going to print out on line 84 as it is now? Andrew.
Like 1 line break, 2 line break, 3 line break.
Yeah, you guys have seen this fat arrow before? It's ES6 syntax, so you might not have. But this is another way of writing a function. It's the same thing as saying it's doing the same thing as this. I kind of did it without thinking because I mostly write in ES6, but it's the same thing that's happening here.
It wouldn't work to write that if in the exercises they're actually looking for function, because it wouldn't pass that test if you use that.
So I think, well, I don't think that actually matters, because I think that the exercise is only looking for the result, and the result is the same. I sort of wrote this unconsciously, not remembering that we were going to stick with ES5 for teaching purposes. So I'm gonna go back to what it was, or I'm gonna try to go back to what it was. Yeah, because what I want to do is sort of illustrate the idea of for each taking its second index, or its second argument rather. Gave the game away a little bit. Its second argument is index, IDX. So now if we console log num and IDX, actually, let's do this. A little math. Who doesn't love math on Saturday morning? Anyone have an idea of what this is going to print?
It would be 1 less than the value, because the index would start at 0, so it would return.
So you think tell me what you think is going to be logged in place of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, it would be 1 more than the value. It would be 1.
You think it'd be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Leah.
1, 3, 5, 6, 8.
Who agrees with Leo? Yeah? Lex? Couple of...
So IDX, is that the reserved word to indicate the index?
No, this could be anything. This could be...
Won't it be undefined?
Yeah, if it's not working.
Wait, what's that?
Won't it be undefined if you're not passing it in?
So for... No is the answer. I just needed to verify that for my own self. The reason it's not going to be undefined is because for each is a native method that like whatever I call it, right, we're giving it 2 parameters here. It would be undefined if I didn't give it 2 parameters. If we did this, it would be like, what's IDX? We have no idea. But just the fact that this function we are giving, because for each takes a function, right? So the fact that the anonymous function, the function that we're writing right now, and giving to the for each function, which takes a function, has 2 parameters, that second parameter is always going to be index. This could be pants. but it's still going to be at the index.
So anytime there's two parameters for a function, the second one is not assigned variable.
Only in for each. If we
Only
yeah, have you guys have you guys been introduced to the Mozilla Developer Network? Yeah, this is love MDN because one of the MDN is going to tell you all of the nitty gritty of like what different parameters of different native functions are. I consult this all the time still, and we can see here in the definition, this tells us that for each is an array method. This tells us that it takes a function, a callback. This is the current value of the array. And then this second, the square bracket means optional. And the second index, the second parameter is always going to be the index. You see here that there's actually an optional third parameter and an optional parameter here. I'm not even going to get into them because this is already confusing enough. But hopefully this illustrates that the second, like it is hard-coded into the for each method, that the second parameter is always the index.
So if you were just console logging the index, it should just go 0, 1, 2, like.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. And I think, but want confirmation that just about, oh God, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. Doesn't really matter. It's just the review slide, but I like to do things by the book. That concludes an introduction to higher order functions. We talked a little bit about why functions are special. They're special because they are first class objects, just like first class values. Just like any other value, they can be passed into functions. They can be returned by functions. You can create them, pass them around, mutate them, whatever. When we pass functions into other functions, they're called callbacks. And an example of a callback in use is JavaScript's native for each method on arrays, which is a function that takes a function and then iterates through the array that it's being dotted off of and uses whatever element it's currently on as the parameter for that callback function. Are there any final, I'm expecting that there are still some questions, but are there any final general questions, actually not general questions, very specific questions about stuff we covered before we get into the workshop? Yeah. Yeah. Let's go back to the anonymous. Speak up. Yeah, sure. Well, the ghost anonymous function. Do you want to just cover what anonymous functions are? Yeah, totally. So this right here is an example of an anonymous function. Oh boy. Hold on. Am I missing something here? I'm missing a semicolon. Why am I missing a semicolon? Oh, wait a minute. Always fun to program. So yeah, on line 71, we are passing an anonymous function into a function that takes a function. The anonymous function is this. So look at what on line 58, this is called a function declaration. because we are declaring that this function is happening by saying function. We're saying the title of the function, which is do something to peeps, and then we're defining what that function takes. 2 parameters, one called peeps, one called fn function. If we have another function available to us in scope, meaning if we have another function available to us in this file, like say sup, we can just pass say sup, the function, into do something to peeps the way it should be. But we don't need to have a function that's defined already. This function declaration just makes it easy for us to reference that bit of logic, pass it around, do other stuff.
Kind of like the difference between doing like let str equal hello first, just putting hello straight into the
Repeat that one more time.
Kind of the same as like you could either do let str equal string and or you could just and then do plus str or you could just go.
That is exactly what it's like. Yeah, because what we're really concerned about here in the second parameter is the logic that's going to be used on line 60. And it doesn't matter whether we give that logic directly to as a parameter or whether we are just referencing it elsewhere. Great question. Anonymous functions are tricky, as is everything we just talked about. Any other specific questions that you guys want to go over? Okay. Oh, sorry, Andrew.
Well, that anonymous one, the function and ghost are both like just. I mean, ghost isn't like I don't know, it's not a string. So, I guess I'm wondering what plugs into ghost when you want to do something that keeps ghost say sup.
What plugs into this?
Yeah, because I know say sup will be the function, but what plugs into ghost?
Yeah. So what we're doing here, I'm just going to bring.
68.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring this down. You're wondering what happens here?
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring this down so we can contextualize what's happening. Actually, that was the wrong thing to bring down. Bring this down too. So, line 76 is where the magic happens, right? Line 76 is where do something with peeps is being invoked. The first function that do something peeps takes is this array, ghosts. Inky, 4 strings, Inky, Pinky, Blinky, and Clyde. When we give it an anonymous function, what we're doing is we are telling do something to peeps that this function that it's being given takes one parameter, which we're calling ghost. It could be anything. It could be pants. And what it's doing is concatenating that parameter with the word sup. So you're asking what the value of this is. The value of this changes every time this for loop makes another tick through the element. Because this function here is this anonymous function. And what it's taking is whatever index of the peeps array we're on. Okay? Yeah. We like it's yeah, when we start out, our for loop is the index is 0, it's pointing to Inky. And so peeps I is Inky. And function, or fn, is a function that takes a parameter called ghost and prints to the console sup that parameter. The parameter is index 0 of the array that we're given. Yeah?
Yeah,
Cool. That is an arm. Sorry, I almost asked David if he had a question. Ironic. Okay, cool. We are going to open up, or I'm going to open up the workshop. Take a minute to use the bathroom, get a drink of water, move to cooler areas of this floor. And then, yeah, you know the drill. If you have any questions, call the help desk. Oh, also, is David here? Not David, David Sell? David Sell is a guy with a beard. He's the fellow. Yeah, hey, hi David Sell. Go Knicks. He's going to be the fellow on help tickets, so we can all help you. And that concludes. First. This is my cat Suki. She helps me code. All right.